The room was quiet, not the comfortable kind of quiet. This was the kind of silence that made you feel someone was watching, even when you could not see them. The air smelled of metal and recycled oxygen, the kind common in old space stations. The walls were smooth, a dull silver, with faint scratches from years of use. A single table stood in the middle of the room. 2 chairs. A recording device, glowing faint blue, floated in the air between them. Commander Threx sat in one of the chairs. He was not a human. He was a Dravarian, tall, with dark gray skin that looked like stone, and sharp ridges running along the sides of his head. His eyes were gold, bright enough to catch the dim light. His body was covered in a black military uniform, decorated with medals that told a history of battles, victories, and the kind of losses soldiers never speak about. He was a war hero. At least, that's what the galaxy called him. The door at the far end of the room slid open with a low hiss. A figure entered. It was not a soldier, not an officer, not anyone Threx had expected. It was a reporter. She was small, thin, and dressed in a simple black jumpsuit. Her species was hard to tell at first glance. Her features were soft, with pale skin and short dark hair. Her steps were quiet, almost careful, as she approached the table. Threx watched her. He could tell, even before she spoke, that she was not afraid of him. The reporter sat opposite him and placed a small data pad on the table. The glowing recording device adjusted its angle, focusing on Threx. "Commander Threx," she began, her voice calm, steady. "Thank you for agreeing to this interview." Threx leaned back in his chair. His golden eyes never left her face. "I did not agree," he said slowly. "Your people insisted." A faint smile appeared on the reporter's lips. "The Alliance wants your story to be heard." "My story?" Threx's voice was deep, almost a growl. "They want a warning." The reporter tilted her head. "A warning about humans?" Threx's eyes narrowed. "Yes," the silence returned. The floating recorder hummed quietly. The reporter glanced at her notes, then looked back at him. "You fought in over a dozen wars across the galaxy. You've defeated enemies twice your size, armies with superior weapons, fleets that outnumbered yours. You've won battles that no one thought could be won. And yet—" She paused, her voice dropping slightly. "The official records say you were defeated only once. By humans." Threx's jaw tightened. His hands, resting on the table, curled into fists. "You think I was defeated?" His tone was sharp, but not angry. More like someone correcting a dangerous mistake. "No, the Dravarian fleet was destroyed. But he stopped, searching for the right words. "I survived." The reporter didn't flinch. She only asked, "Then tell me, what happened?" Threx leaned forward. The light caught the ridges on his face, casting shadows that made him look older than his years. "What happened," he said, "is that I saw what humans can do, and I will never forget it." The room seemed colder. The reporter didn't look away. "Start from the beginning," she said. Threx's gaze shifted slightly, not looking at her anymore. His eyes stared past the walls of the room, into a memory that was far away but still painfully clear. It was 17 standard years ago, he began. The Dravarian fleet had received orders from the Galactic High Command. A new species had been detected at the edge of Alliance space, small, weak, technologically behind the humans. He gave a bitter laugh, a sound without joy. "We were told they were barely a threat, that they had no standing army worth noting, that their fleets were outdated, their weapons primitive. High Command sent us to test them." The reporter scribbled notes, but her eyes never left him. "We arrived in their system expecting surrender," Threx continued. "Their homeworld, they call it Earth, was beautiful from orbit. Blue oceans, green lands, white clouds, peaceful. We thought it would be easy." He leaned back, his voice dropping lower. "We were wrong. The memory sharpened in his mind. He remembered the view from the command deck, the bright curve of Earth hanging in space, the Dravarian fleet positioned like hunters around prey. 20 capital ships, dozens of cruisers, hundreds of fighters. It was a force that had broken empires. The first human message came as a simple audio transmission, a human voice, deep, calm, steady. It said only this: leave now or stay. Forever. Threx had been on many battlefronts, faced enemies who screamed threats and promises of pain. But never had he heard such calm in the face of an entire war fleet. The voice did not shout. It did not beg. It simply told them the truth. The Dravarian fleet laughed. Literally laughed. They don't even have proper defenses, one of Threx's lieutenants had said. We could take the planet in a day. Orders came quickly from high command. Proceed. So they moved in. The human ships were small, their designs outdated, their numbers few. It looked like a battle that would be over before it began. But Threx noticed something. They let us come closer, he told the reporter. They didn't retreat. They didn't hide. They waited. The reporter's pen stopped. Waited for what? Threx's eyes darkened. For the moment we thought we were winning. He could still see it clearly, the exact second the battle changed. The Dravarian fleet launched its first wave. Energy cannons lit up the void, targeting human ships, and yet the humans did not fire back. Not at first. They let the Dravarian ships close the distance, too close, far past the safe range for capital ships. Then the first human ship fired. It was not a weapon, at least, not in the way Threx understood. It was an enormous electromagnetic pulse. A wave of invisible energy spread across space, hitting half the Dravarian fleet at once. Shields collapsed. Engines died. Systems went dark. Ships drifted. Powerless. It was like a trap closing around us, Threx said quietly. Half our fleet was blind. The other half had no idea what was coming. The reporter's eyes were wide. And what was coming? Threx leaned forward again. His voice was almost a whisper. Humans. The memory of that moment was sharp, enough to make his hands clench. The human ships moved in with terrifying precision. They didn't attack randomly. They picked the most dangerous targets first, disabling them without destroying them. Their pilots flew like they didn't care about survival. They took risks no Dravarian, no alien Threx had ever met, would dare to take. I saw one human fighter fly straight between two of our capital ships, Threx said. They had seconds before being torn apart, but they made it. And they took out our targeting arrays as they passed. The humans fought differently. They didn't just follow orders, they adapted every second, changing tactics faster than Dravarian systems could predict. They were not the strongest. They were not the fastest, Threx admitted, but they were the most unpredictable. The battle was chaos, but it was their chaos. Humans thrived in it. And when the Dravarian fleet finally began to regroup, the humans sent a single message. Threx repeated it aloud, his voice steady. Round one is over. The reporter's voice was low now. And that was the beginning? Threx nodded slowly. That was the moment I understood something, he said. We had not come to defeat a weak enemy. We had walked into the den of a predator. And we didn't even know it. The room was silent again, the tension so heavy it felt like the air itself had thickened. The reporter's hand trembled slightly as she wrote her notes. She wasn't sure if it was fear or excitement. Threx sat back in his chair, his golden eyes locked on hers. You wanted my story, he said. That was only the first hour of the war. The hum of the recording device was the only sound in the room. The reporter sat still, her eyes fixed on Commander Threx. She could feel it. His voice was not just telling a story. It was pulling her into it. Threx's gaze was distant, but his voice stayed calm. We thought that first EMI blast was a lucky trick, he said. We believed humans had fired their best weapon, and that they had nothing left. He leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. His shadow stretched across the metal surface like a dark claw. But humans. He paused. Humans always have something left. In his memory, the battle over Earth still burned bright. Half the Dravarian fleet floated uselessly in space, their systems dead from the pulse. The other half scrambled to protect them, fighters darting like angry insects. On the human side, their small ships moved fast, weaving between wreckage and disabled cruisers. They didn't try to destroy us, Threx said. That's what confused me most. If they had pressed the attack, they could have finished us. But they didn't. They hit, then pulled back, then hit again. They kept us guessing. The reporter's pen scratched against her notes. Why hold back? Threx's golden eyes narrowed. Because they were studying us. He remembered the strange, deliberate rhythm of the fight. The humans seemed to vanish from his sensors at will, hiding in debris fields or behind the bulk of their own carriers. Then, just when Dravarian forces adjusted, the humans reappeared in a new formation. It was like fighting ghosts. The first real counterattack began 20 minutes after the EMP. A squadron of human fighters emerged from behind Earth's moon, accelerating so fast that Threx's targeting systems had trouble locking onto them. Each fighter carried a weapon he had never seen before, not energy cannons, not plasma torpedoes, but physical projectiles. Primitive technology, Threx said with a faint smirk. Or so we thought. When those projectiles hit, they tore straight through Dravarian shields. Not because they were stronger, but because the humans had coated them with some kind of energy-disrupting layer. The shields rippled like water and failed for just long enough to let the projectiles pass. They used old ideas in new ways, Threx said. It was clever. One of his lieutenants had shouted across the bridge that they were losing control of the battle. Threx had refused to believe it, not yet. He ordered his ships to push forward, to close the distance. That was when the humans surprised him again. They didn't retreat toward their planet, he said. They came toward us. It was the kind of move no Dravarian commander would ever order. Closing the gap meant more risk, less room to maneuver. But the humans didn't seem to care. They moved like a single living thing, squadrons protecting one another, ships trading positions in mid-flight without hesitation. And then, just when they were close enough for hand-to-hand combat, if they'd been in atmosphere, the humans fired and stopped. They didn't finish the kill. They pulled back again. The reporter frowned. So they were playing with you? Threx's jaw tightened. They were deciding if they needed to destroy us. That truth had taken him years to admit, but now it came out like a weight he could not carry any longer. We thought they feared us. But no, they were testing us, seeing how far we would go, what we would risk, what we were willing to sacrifice. Then came the transmission. A human voice again, perhaps the same as before, perhaps not. Still calm, still terrifying in its control. You've had your warning. Leave now. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't a plea. It was a fact. A statement of what would happen if the Dravarian fleet stayed. High Command ordered them to ignore it. Pride demanded they keep fighting. But Threx, even then, felt something he had never felt before in battle. Not fear of death. Fear of the unknown. The next phase of the battle began without any weapons at all. Our sensors started to fail, Threx explained. Not from damage, but from something else. Something human. The humans deployed drones, tiny, almost invisible machines that swarmed Dravarian ships. They didn't attack directly. Instead, they released clouds of microparticles that interfered with targeting systems and communications. Ships that had been fighting side by side suddenly lost track of each other. Formations broke. Commands were delayed or never received at all. They turned our numbers against us, Threx said. We were crashing into each other, firing at shadows. And the humans stayed calm. He remembered seeing one human cruiser drift between two Dravarian destroyers, its shields flickering from repeated hits, its hull scarred and smoking. Any sane commander would have pulled back. But instead, the cruiser held position. Then its side panels opened, and dozens of smaller human craft poured out, darting in all directions like a sudden storm. They weren't just fighting in space, Threx said slowly. They were fighting in our minds. The smaller craft didn't try to destroy the destroyers. They targeted engines, weapon ports, and sensor arrays. Within minutes, both Dravarian ships were adrift and blind. The reporter shifted in her chair, the weight of the story settling on her shoulders. You make it sound like they could have ended it at any time. Threx's voice dropped lower. They could have. And that was the most unsettling part. The humans were in control of the battle from the moment the first pulse hit. They didn't just win through brute force or better weapons. They won because they understood the flow of the fight, and they shaped it. They didn't fight like soldiers, Threx said. They fought like survivors. Hours into the battle, the Dravarian fleet was scattered. Ships were lost. Others drifted without power. And yet, no human vessel approached for the final kill. Instead, another message came. This is your second and last warning. The voice was calm, almost tired. They gave us a chance to leave, Threx said. Twice. The reporter tilted her head. And did you? Threx's eyes hardened. No. High Command had sent reinforcements. A second wave of Dravarian ships entering the system. Threx was ordered to hold position until they arrived. He had warned them it was a mistake. They did not listen. The humans didn't wait for the Kaugi second wave to engage, Threx recalled. They vanished. The reporter blinked. Vanished? Off our sensors. No heat signatures. No readings, nothing. He spread his hands. It was as if they had dissolved into space itself. For the next hour, the Dravarian fleet searched. They fired into empty space, sent probes in every direction, scanned every asteroid and piece of debris. Nothing. And then, without warning, the humans reappeared. Not in front, Threx said softly. Behind. The human fleet had circled the entire Dravarian position, using the system's gravity wells and debris fields to mask their movement. By the time Dravarian sensors picked them up, they were already in attack range. They didn't just outfight US, Threx said. They outhot us. The humans struck fast and hard. They targeted supply ships, fuel carriers, and communication relays. Within minutes, Dravarian ships were cut off from one another, each isolated and vulnerable. They broke our spine without touching the head, Threx said. The battle was effectively over, but the humans didn't press the final attack. The reporter's voice was almost a whisper now. Why not? Threx's eyes met hers. Because they wanted us to live. To tell the story. He sat back in his chair, the weight of memory heavy in his shoulders. They could have wiped us out completely. Instead, they sent one final message. He repeated it, word for word. Next time we will not give warnings. The room was silent for several long seconds. The reporter felt her heartbeat in her ears. Her pen hovered above her notes but didn't move. Threx's voice, when he spoke again, was colder than the void between stars. That was the first encounter, he said, and it was enough to haunt me for the rest of my life. The reporter leaned closer. She had been silent for several minutes, letting the last words of Commander Threx sink in. But there was something she still didn't understand. You said they could have ended the battle. She began slowly, but they didn't. Was that mercy or a warning? Threx's eyes stayed fixed on her, golden and unblinking. It was both. And I only understood why when I saw their real weapon. His memory drifted back, pulling him into the heat of that day. The second wave of Dravarian ships had arrived. 50 fresh vessels, armed and ready, dropped into the system. The surviving fleet, battered and humiliated, took formation beside them. High Command's orders were clear: push forward, crush resistance, claim the planet. We believed numbers would decide the battle, Threx said. We thought humans would retreat when they saw our reinforcements. But the humans didn't retreat. Instead, they disappeared from the main battlefield. Their ships scattered, moving into asteroid fields, drifting near the edges of the systems. Gravity wells. On Dravarian sensors, they were faint, like flickers, at the edge of vision. It was as if they were waiting, Threx said. And then I learned what they were waiting for. The first sign came from the outer perimeter. Dravarian patrol cruiser reported picking up something unusual, a single human vessel, much larger than any they had seen before. It wasn't sleek like their fighters, or heavy like their carriers. It was strange. The hull looked patched together from different designs, parts of it old and worn, other parts smooth and new. It moved slowly, too slowly to be a threat. And it didn't seem armed. High Command dismissed it as a decoy. The patrol cruiser was ordered to destroy it. They opened fire, Threx said, his voice lower now. Their shots hit, but the ship didn't break apart. It absorbed them. The reporter frowned. Absorbed? Yes, Threx replied. The energy didn't explode on the hull. It vanished like water poured into sand. Before the patrol cruiser could fire again, the strange human ship sent out a pulse. Not the same EMP as before. This was smaller, more focused. Every Dravarian ship within 1,000 kilometers went silent. Not destroyed, Threx explained. Just taken. Our systems were still on, our engines still warm, but control was gone. It was like the ship no longer belonged to us. The reporter's eyebrows rose. You mean they hacked your ships? Threx shook his head. No, they didn't hack them. They took them, as if they were pulling the strings directly. Our own systems began to obey them instead of us. The strange human ship moved slowly toward the rest of the fleet. It wasn't fast, it wasn't threatening, but everywhere it went, ships died without being destroyed. This, Threx said, was their real weapon. A way to end a war without firing a shot. He still remembered the helpless feeling on his command deck. Lights still blinking. Screens still active, but every command ignored. Even his own flagship began to turn, not under his control, but under theirs. It is one thing to face an enemy who can kill you, Threx said softly. It is another to face one who can take everything you are and make it theirs. The humans didn't use the weapon on the entire fleet. Only on select ships, enough to cause confusion and fear. Those captured vessels began moving back toward the Dravarian lines. And then, they fired. They made our own ships fire on us, Threx said. They didn't just break our formation. They made us fear each other. The reporter's face was pale now. How could they have developed something like that? Even the Alliance doesn't. That, Threx interrupted, is the question that has haunted me. No one knows. Perhaps they invented it themselves. Perhaps they took the idea from another war, another enemy. But one thing is certain. They never showed it in the first engagement. They saved it for when we thought we had them. He leaned closer. That is human thinking. They don't throw everything into the first blow. They wait. They study. And when they strike, they use exactly what will hurt the most. The strangest part was what happened next. The humans disabled 5 Dravarian ships. And then stopped. They didn't take more, Threx said. They let us keep the rest. And I began to realize something. They didn't want to destroy our fleet. They wanted us to see. The captured Dravarian ships drifted toward the human lines, where human boarding teams entered them. The humans didn't strip them for parts. They didn't kill the crews. Instead, they sent the crews back. The reporter blinked. Back? Alive? Yes. Threx said. Alive, and with a message. The humans returned every captured crew member in escape pods. Each pod carried the same small device, a simple audio player. When activated, it spoke in that same calm voice. We have given you a demonstration. Do not make us repeat it. For the first time in years, Threx felt something he didn't recognize at first. Not defeat, not anger, but respect. They fought with precision, he said. Every move was deliberate. Every decision had meaning. They didn't waste time. They didn't waste lives. He glanced at the reporter. And they never explained how the weapon worked. Not then, not ever. The battle could have ended there. The humans had proven they could take ships without firing. They had proven they could survive against larger forces. They had proven they could outthink the Dravarian fleet at every step. But High Command still refused to retreat. They thought the weapon had limits, Threx said. They thought if we attacked all at once, the humans wouldn't be able to use it fast enough. The order came down. Full assault. It was in that moment, Threx said, that he truly understood what humans were capable of. They didn't meet our attack head-on. They split into small groups, squads of 3 or 4 ships each, and they didn't just fight our ships. They hunted our commanders. The humans seemed to know exactly where every command ship was located. They didn't destroy them. They disabled them, boarding them in minutes. In some cases, they took the entire crew alive. In others, no Dravarian returned at all. They were not fighting for ground, Threx said. They were fighting for control. The turning point came when Threx's own ship was targeted. A human missile locked onto him, sleek, small, and fast. His crew fired countermeasures, but the missile didn't explode. Instead, it attached to the hull. An open dot from inside poured a human boarding team. They were small, quick, and silent, Threx said. Their armor was light, their weapons simple, but every movement was precise. He fought them himself in the corridors of his ship. They didn't shout, didn't hesitate. When one fell, another took their place instantly. I have fought soldiers all my life, Threx said, but I had never fought hunters. They reached his bridge in less than 5 minutes. The leader, a tall human with a scar across his jaw, didn't kill him. He didn't even raise his weapon. Instead, he looked Threx in the eye and said one thing: we could have ended you. We chose not to. Threx sat back in his chair now, the memory weighing on him like armor. That, he said, was the moment. I knew the war was already lost. Not because they had better weapons, but because they were willing to hold them back. The reporter swallowed. Why? Threx's voice was flat. So we would remember. The reporter's voice was quieter now, almost hesitant. She had listened to every detail so far without interrupting, but the look in Commander Threx's golden eyes made her uneasy. You said the war was already lost, she said. But it didn't end there? Threx shook his head slowly. No, the worst was yet to come. The humans had taken ships without destroying them. They had boarded flagships without killing the crews. They had shown weapons the Dravarian fleet had no defense against. And yet, High Command still believed victory was possible. They thought we had seen everything humans could do, Threx said bitterly. They thought their restraint was weakness. Orders came through the command network. The second wave would strike. This time, there would be no holding back. The second wave was unlike the first. It was larger, nearly double the number of ships. It was faster, upgraded engines pushing them to the edge of safety. And it was angrier, captains hungry to erase the humiliation of the first encounter. We were told the humans would not withstand such force, Threx said. We believed them. We thought this would be the final push. The Dravarian fleet advanced in perfect formation, shields active, weapons primed. They moved as one, a wall of firepower that had crushed countless enemies before, but the battlefield was empty. No human ships waited for them. No fighters, no carriers, not even drones. They were gone, Threx said. Completely gone, as if they had abandoned the system. The fleet spread out, searching. Patrols swept the asteroid belt. Scans probed every moon and satellite. Hours passed. Then, the first ship disappeared. It happened without warning. One moment, a Dravarian destroyer was broadcasting its position. The next, silence. No distress call, no explosion. Just gone. Minutes later, another ship vanished. Then another. They weren't destroyed, Threx said. They were taken. The humans weren't meeting the fleet head-on. They were pulling it apart, one piece at a time. On the bridge of his flagship, Threx ordered tighter formations. But even then, ships began to vanish from the edges. Patrols sent to investigate never returned. It was like being stalked by predators in the dark. They didn't come for the strongest ships, Threx noted. They came for the isolated ones, the ones too far from help. Every disappearance shook the fleet's confidence. Captains whispered to each other over secure channels. Crew members refused to patrol alone. Some ships even turned their weapons toward their own allies, mistaking them for human boarders. The first real contact came 6 hours into the operation. A squadron of Dravarian cruisers spotted human ships near the shadow of a gas giant. They gave chase and walked into the trap. The humans had hidden entire fleets behind the planet's magnetic field, Threx said. By the time the cruisers saw them, it was too late. Human ships emerged in waves, surrounding the squadron. They didn't destroy them. They disabled them, boarded them, and then let a few survivors go. The survivors were meant to carry a message, Threx explained. The message was, we are everywhere. By now, the Dravarian fleet was rattled. Even the most disciplined captains were making mistakes. Formations broke. Defensive lines shifted erratically. And all the while, the humans remained invisible. Until the moment they struck. They used the battlefield like it was part of them, Threx said. Debris fields became hiding spots. Radiation bursts became cover. Even our own destroyed ships became traps. Then came the night strike. It wasn't truly night, of course. Space had no day or night. But the Dravarian fleet had moved into the shadow of the planet, their sensors dulled by interference. That was when the humans attacked in force. They came from above, below, and inside our own lines, Threx said. It was chaos. They didn't try to hold ground. They hit, vanished, and hit again from another angle. He remembered the view from his bridge. Human ships flashing in and out of sensor range. Bursts of weapons fire lighting the dark like brief storms. They moved like they were dancing, Threx admitted quietly. Deadly precise. And beautiful. But the most terrifying part wasn't their speed or tactics. It was what they didn't do. They could have destroyed the entire fleet that night, Threx said. They had the advantage, but again, they stopped. The humans pulled back as suddenly as they had appeared. The Dravarian ships, battered and broken, were left drifting in silence. The reporter frowned. Why stop? Why not finish it? Threx's gaze was steady. Because they wanted us to bring the story home. They wanted the entire galaxy to know. The next day, the humans revealed something new. It started with a signal, a low-frequency pulse that rolled through the fleet. It wasn't strong enough to disable systems, but it was enough to get their attention. Every screen on every Dravarian ship flickered, and then the same human voice that had spoken before filled every bridge. This is the second and last time we will tell you. Leave. There was no anger in the voice. No shouting. Just certainty. High Command ordered an all-out attack. Every ship charged its weapons. Every fighter prepared to launch. And then, nothing. Our sensors failed again, Threx said. Not just in one sector, everywhere. We couldn't see them. We couldn't track them. And then, he paused. his voice dropping. They were inside our formation. The humans appeared all at once, dozens of ships, each targeting a specific command vessel. Threx watched as flagships went dark one by one, their commanders taken or silenced. They didn't care about the rest of the fleet, Threx said. They only cared about the leaders. Cut off the head, and the body dies. Within an hour, the Draverian chain of command collapsed. Captains were issuing conflicting orders. Some ships fired on allies by mistake. Others shut down their weapons entirely. Threx's own ship was targeted again. This time, the boarding team didn't just take the bridge, they took the entire ship. They knew every corridor, Threx said. Every system. It was as if they had studied my ship before the battle even began. The leader of the human team approached Threx once more. The same man, the same scar, the same calm eyes. You have seen the second wave, he said. There will not be a third. Threx leaned back in his chair now, the memory still sharp. That was the moment I realized. They were not fighting to win, they were fighting to end it. The reporter's hands were trembling slightly as she wrote. And High Command? What did they say after that? Threx's expression hardened. They called it a temporary setback. They wanted to regroup and try again. The reporter stared at him. And you? I told them, Threx said, that the war was already over. They just didn't know it yet. The room was quiet after Commander Threx's last words. The reporter could hear only the faint hum of the station's life support systems, a constant reminder they were far from any planet. She leaned forward. If you told them the war was over, why didn't they listen? Threx gave a humorless smile. Because they had never faced defeat, not like this. They thought if they threw more ships, more weapons, more soldiers at the problem, they would break the humans. The reporter's pen scratched against paper. And did they try? Oh yes, Threx said softly. But they didn't know. The humans had already decided to risk everything. The quiet before the storm after. The second wave's failure, the galaxy expected humans to press their advantage. They had crippled the Draverian command structure. They had proven they could appear anywhere. The logical move would be to attack the Draverian homeworlds directly. But they didn't, Threx said. For 3 full cycles. They vanished. The Draverian fleet scoured space, searching for any sign of them. Nothing. Not a single human. Ship crossed their sensors. It was as if humanity had left. High Command celebrated, Threx said bitterly. They believed humans had realized they could not win and had retreated to their own territory. The reporter frowned. But you didn't believe that. Threx's golden eyes narrowed. No, because predators do not run when they smell blood. The first signs, the first hints of human activity came from the farthest edges of Draverian space. Small outposts went silent. Mining stations sent one last transmission before disappearing. Merchant convoys reported being shadowed by ships they couldn't identify. At first, High Command dismissed it, Threx said. They called it pirate activity. They told us not to waste resources, but the disappearances grew bolder. Outposts vanished closer and closer to the Draverian core. Systems. Entire sectors went dark. And then, Threx said, the real message came. The message it began with a Draverian civilian broadcast, a simple news feed about trade agreements. Halfway through, the image flickered. A human face appeared. It was not shouting. It was not threatening. It simply said, in perfect Draverian language, "We are coming." Then the screen went black. It lasted less than 3 seconds, Threx said. But it was all anyone could talk about. High Command claimed it was propaganda. But in the fleets, we knew. They were warning us. The risk no one expected. The reporter tapped her pen thoughtfully. What was the gamble? Was it that they would attack your homeworld? Threx shook his head slowly. No, the gamble was that they attacked everywhere at once. The humans struck in a way no strategist in the galaxy believed possible. They hit 13 separate systems in the same day. They didn't just target military bases, they targeted shipyards, communication hubs, fuel depots, and even food storage facilities. They moved in small units, Threx explained. 1 or 2 ships, sometimes even just 1. But each strike was precise. Each strike cut off something the fleet needed to survive. The Draverian war machine depended on long, stable supply lines. The humans didn't need to defeat the fleet. They only needed to starve it. The collapse of the network, Threx's voice lowered. You have never seen a war machine collapse until you have seen its supply lines broken. Fuel convoys never arrived. Replacement parts for damaged ships were stuck in warehouses with no way to move them. Fleets in deep space were forced to abandon positions because their food supplies ran out. And still, High Command refused to retreat. They told us to hold the line, Threx said. But the line was already broken. A strange mercy. What puzzled Threx most was that the humans could have caused far more destruction. They could have destroyed every food shipment, every medical supply run, he said. But they didn't. They targeted only what we needed to fight. The reporter raised an eyebrow. So they left civilians alone? Not entirely, Threx admitted. Some civilian stations were hit, but in every case, the humans evacuated the civilians first. The strange mercy confused the Draverian commanders. It also terrified them. It meant, Threx said slowly, that the humans weren't being careless. They were making choices. Very deliberate choices. The trap in the stars. By the time High Command decided to launch a counterstrike, the humans had already set their trap. They leaked information, Threx said. They made us believe a major human fleet was gathering in the Hellas Corridor. The Hellas Corridor was a narrow stretch of space between 2 massive nebulae, a perfect place for an ambush. But the Draverians didn't think humans would risk trapping themselves there. They thought we were the ones setting the trap, Threx said grimly. So the Draverians sent everything they had left. 7 fleets, hundreds of ships, their most experienced admirals. And when we arrived, Threx said, the corridor was empty. The sky turns against them, then the stars move. At least, that's how it looked to the Draverian crews. The corridors. Walls of gas and dust shifted, revealing hundreds of small hidden objects. They weren't asteroids, Threx said. They were mines, thousands of them. The humans had been placing them for weeks, hidden by the nebula's interference. Once the Draverian fleets entered, the humans detonated them in precise patterns, hurting the ships exactly where they wanted. And then, Threx said, the real fleet appeared. From the cover of the nebula came human warships, not dozens, but hundreds. They didn't attack all at once. They struck in waves, each wave targeting a specific fleet until it was crippled. The breaking point, the battle lasted less than 2 hours. When it was over, Threx said, more than half hour. Ships were gone. The rest were either disabled or retreating. High Command ordered Threx to regroup what forces remained. But he knew it was pointless. It wasn't just that they had beaten us again, Threx said. It was that they had beaten us with fewer ships, less firepower, and while taking almost no losses. The reporter's eyes widened. How is that possible? Threx's answer was simple. Because they understood something we did not. They understood that war is not about who fires the most shots, but who chooses the battlefield. The final warning after the Hellas Corridor. The humans sent one last transmission to the Draverian government. It was short. 5 words. This is your last chance. High Command ignored it. I told them, Threx said, that if they ignored it, there would be no fleets left to command. The reporter set her pen down. And that's when the war ended? Threx's gaze turned cold. No, that's when the humans did something no one in the galaxy thought they would do. He leaned forward, his voice low. They came for our home. The silence in the interview room was heavy. Commander Threx's eyes burned with memories that refused to fade. The reporter leaned closer, sensing the weight of what was coming. "You said they came for your home," she whispered. "What happened?" Next, Threx's voice was low but steady. "They did. And everything changed." The calm before the storm, after the devastating defeat in the Hellas corridor, the Dravarian High Command was desperate. Their fleets were shattered, their supply lines cut, their morale broken, yet they refused to surrender. "We believed," Threx said bitterly, "that our homeworld, the great Dravarian Empire's capital, was safe, fortified beyond imagination." Massive defense stations surrounded the planet. Shield arrays blotted out the stars. Hundreds of warships orbited in protective formations. Humans didn't care, Threx said. The arrival without warning. A human fleet appeared in orbit. It was smaller than any fleet the Dravarians had seen before, but it carried something far more dangerous than numbers or firepower. "They brought the weapon," Threx said quietly. The strange device, the one that had taken control of Dravarian ships, was now mounted on their largest carriers, like a shadow stretching over the world, Threx said. The weapon spread its influence silently. The battle for the Dravarian homeworld lasted weeks. Dravarian ships fought desperately, pushing the humans back from the atmosphere. Planetary defenses fired volleys of missiles and energy blasts, but every time the humans advanced, the weapon's effect spread. Ships and stations alike lost control. They became puppets of the invaders. Brother fought brother, Threx said, voice breaking. Friends turned on friends. It was chaos. The Dravarian people watched their empire unravel. Their leaders were powerless. A message from the humans amid the chaos, the humans sent a broadcast to the planet's capital. The same calm voice spoke again, echoing through every communication channel. "This is your final warning. Surrender now or face total destruction." But the Dravarian government refused. They believed they still had time, Threx said. They believed our weapons and defenses would hold. The turning point, Threx was ordered to lead a counterattack, one last desperate strike to break the siege. His flagship was damaged but still operational. He led a small fleet through the enemy lines, aiming to destroy the human carriers holding the weapon. The battle was fierce. Explosions lit the void. Ships exploded in fireballs. The screams of the dying echoed in the comms, but the humans were relentless. The strange weapon on their carriers protected them, and their fighters kept the Dravarian ships at bay. The final blow in the heart of the battle. Threx's ship was hit, not by missiles or lasers, but by the weapon's invisible force. His crew lost control of the ship. The human boarding team boarded swiftly, but this time they came with no mercy. Threx was captured, the confession now. Years later, he sat before the reporter. His face was weathered. His eyes carried the weight of 1,000 battles. "I was their prisoner," he said, "forced to watch as the humans claimed my world." But even in captivity, Threx learned something unexpected. The humans did not want to destroy us, he said. They wanted to change us. The aftermath, the Dravarian Empire surrendered, not because their fleets were destroyed, not because their people were slaughtered, but because the humans offered something else. A chance to survive, a chance to learn, a chance to be more than conquerors and conquered. The human Threx's voice softened. The humans fought not to kill, but to teach. They showed us our weaknesses and our strengths. He looked at the reporter. They gambled everything on one thing, the hope that we could become allies, that we could choose peace. The future now, years after the war, the Dravarian Empire and humans work together. They face new threats. They share knowledge. They build a future. And Threx, he still carries the memory of the war, but also the hope. He said quietly. The reporter closed her notebook. The interview was over. She looked at Commander Threx and saw not just a warrior, but a man changed by what he had seen. a man who had witnessed the best and worst of humanity.